Hello everyone and welcome back. This is my guide to the Trials of Chaos in the Ultimatum League. In this guide we'll cover all of the types of encounters, including the inscribed ones. We'll talk about all of the degens that you can select for those encounters and which are the best to run and which without, how I do these to be as safe as possible, and when I choose to give up. I hope you find this useful and I hope you enjoy. First of all, let's talk about the encounters, of which there are 4 types. There is Survival, which is the one you're seeing now. There is Protect the Altar, where you protect the altar in the centre of the Trial of Chaos. There's Defeat Waves of Enemies, where you just have to kill things, which is really easy. And then there's Stand in Stone Circles. The easiest of these encounters is Defeat the Waves of Enemies. And that's because once you defeat the waves of enemies, it's all over. In second place, for difficulty in my opinion, is Protect the Altar, as this is kill waves of enemies but with an added challenge of keeping the altar alive. If the altar is destroyed, you lose the ultimatum encounter. And then we got Survival, which isn't massively more difficult than the other two, but each round of the encounters is timed, and until that timer runs down to 0, you don't complete that round of the challenge. For strong characters, this is more dangerous on the grounds that the encounter can't be ended just by absolutely slaughtering everything in the circle. The last of the encounters is Stand in the Stone Circles, which is just evil. This particularly evil flavour of encounter requires a little bit more explanation than the other 3, so let's go right to it. As the name suggests, there are stone circles within the encounter circle. And what you have to do is stand in these circles for a period of time to make them go away. Once all the stone circles have been defeated, you'll get to the next round. But there is a very, very small catch to this, which is actually quite large. And that is standing still will get you killed 9 times out of 10. And as we all know, dying in Path of Exile is not particularly pleasant because we'll lose 10% of our XP. But there is a workaround, and that is that the time doesn't have to be contiguous, in that the circles actually keep track of how long you've been in them, and so when you go back to them, it continues from where it left off. This means that we can run between the circles without completing them and finish them that way. That sounds easy enough, so this one is really easy then. No, it's still an evil nightmare, because there's still the same number of mobs that really do want you dead, which you have to kill as you're travelling between those circles. And it's very easy to get hit and stunned, which pretty much means certain doom as well. But this is the only way I've found of defeating the harder encounters. In order to lure you into a false sense of security before it completely annihilates you, the game decides to try and look all innocent by providing a nice user interface which not only points you to the nearest stone circle, but also has little flames on each of the stones in the stone circle that when all of them are lit up, you know you've completed that particular circle. But don't fall for it, ladies and gentlemen, because this particular encounter does really want you dead. And I have a cunning plan to avoid death. And this is what I like to think of as the hamster wheel method. It basically involves you running around in a circle, only stopping very, very briefly to shoot enemies, because movement is a key part of staying alive in Path of Exile anyway. And this is a circle, so we're going to run around in that circle. Which leads me on to another point. Sometimes the circle isn't a circle, and that's because that circle also covers parts that aren't ground. So in some cases we actually run around on a very small ledge. So what do we do in these cases? If you were me, I would skip the encounters and not even run them. They are incredibly dangerous and I've died to most of them that I've attempted. If you are going to run them, then have a reliable way of passing through mobs, because otherwise you'll get stunned and killed. One such way is to employ phasing. Now, unlike Ritual, you can actually leave these circles, and we can leave them for up to 5 seconds before failing the encounter. So if it's absolutely essential you avoid damage, you can leave the circle briefly and then come back in. Now this 5 seconds resets each time you leave the circle, so you do have 5 seconds each time, it's not accumulative. So how do you determine that you've had enough and you should quit the encounter rather than continuing? For this, you certainly do not take into account the fact that the game has just offered you an Exalt or something to continue playing.
Yes, come lose a trial.
Because this is its cunning plan to keep you there just long enough for the game to absolutely annihilate you again. What I tend to do is each time we get to the screen to select the next item, I will try and remember how many times I've had a really close call in the last encounter, and if it's beyond 2, I will walk away with my prizes. Also, if I've spent the round with less than half health for most of it, or end really close to death, I also quit the encounter and take away what I've got from it. And the final criteria I use, if what I've made so far is enough to make me cry, or swear profusely if I lose it, then that tends to be a sign I should walk away with my winnings. As a famous philosopher once said, you gotta know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. And something about never counting your money while you're sitting at a table. So what do I think of the rewards? Too much? Too little? I actually think they're in a really good place. They don't just throw currency at you like some rewards. I mean, I got my first 5 link from them, which really helped me progress in the game. But also, there is enough currency there, especially in maps, to make it feel really rewarding. Now, what I have found is the first prize tends to be really, really crappy. Second prize starts to get better, but it's still nowhere near good. Around about the 3rd round is where you start to get decent prizes. Sometimes 2 or 3 chaos. It's really quite profitable. And just as a bit of extra information, which some people in my guild didn't know, when you actually walk away from a trial, you don't just take the last round's prize, you take all prizes that came before it. So these can stack up to be quite remarkable, actually. I really cannot remember a league that rewarded you quite as much, especially when you actually get to the end. Now, on the subject of the end, how many rounds would it actually take us to get there? It's actually variable between 3 and 9 rounds, depending on the level of the area that you're in. I also understand that there is a very small chance to get a magical 10th round where you're teleported to a boss arena to actually fight the Trial Master himself. Now, there are rumours going around that this is 1% for tier 11 to tier 13 maps, and 2% for tier 14 maps plus, although I haven't had any solid evidence of this at this point. That, of course, is astronomically small, so many of us will never ever face him. If I am lucky enough to ever get there, then I will certainly share the fight with you. Now, something that we do get a damn sight more than 2% is Inscribed Ultimatums. And this is actually what you're seeing now. They come in exactly the same flavours as the original 4, and you just have to complete all the waves in order to get your prize, which is double the currency you had to spend to start it. In this case, this was 10 Blessed Orbs, which I will lose all of if I fail the encounter. So this really is a double or nothing round. And from what I can tell, the other stuff that drops in here is extremely slim pickings. It's sometimes important to note the thing you're offering isn't always currency. It can be an item for a higher level item, a divination card, or something like that. You just need to work out, is it worth it, and can I really cope with losing this item if I fail? Now, there's an argument in this one to say protect the altar is actually the harder round because you've got to stay around the centre a lot more than you would have in the other rounds. Okay, failure conditions, of which there are many. 1. Getting hit by 7 stacks of ruin. 2. Death. 3. Altar destruction. 4. Leaving the circle for more than 5 seconds. And 5. Greed. See death. Onto the modifiers now, and these are the things that you apply each round, or in the case of an Inscribed Ultimatum, happen all at once. And I'm going to break these into 3 categories. 1. Easy for practically everybody. 2. Could be problematic for your build. And 3. Don't touch it with a barge pole. Possibly the easiest one, and the one I go for first if I can, is choking miasma to all 3 levels. The second thing I would go for is stalking ruin. After this, normal ruin, both to level 3. And that's because all 3 of these are quite slow and easy to see, so they're very easy to evade. Once I've exhausted these 3, I tend to fall back on the following 3 in the following order. Restless Ground, Raging Dead, and Blistering Cold, all of which are fairly easy to see and fairly easy to avoid. And last but not least, Razor Dance. Doesn't appear to do an awful lot because everyone has an anti-bleed flask, or should. Of course, because the number of enemies in this area, getting flash charges back is not normally going to be an issue for you. Onto the situational ones now, which is the could be really easy or could be really hard for my build. Totem of Costly Might and Totem of Costly Potency both do a similar thing, giving the monsters much more damage. If your build can tank fairly well, then these shouldn't be a problem, and they actually kill the monsters they're on. Next, Reduced Recovery, 30% reduced life, mana, energy shield recovery rate. Most builds have quite a lot of overhead here, and so this won't affect many builds. However, level 2 is a different story at 60% and could affect many builds. If you heavily leech, then this probably isn't a problem. Lessened Reach. If you don't do area of effect or projectiles, then this won't affect you at all, and feel free to take it. Buffs expire faster. Could be a major problem if your build heavily relies on buffs. Less cooldown recovery. Probably affects spells far more than attacks, so attacks should be fairly safe with this one. Unlucky criticals. You probably want to avoid this if you need crit a lot to survive, such as freezing people. Ailment and Curse Reflection does exactly what it says on the tin, reflects ailments and curses. Could be a problem if you deal heavy ailments, or cast a lot of curses, as the name suggests. Could be particularly nice if your build relies on you poisoning yourself, or enjoy a bit of self-flagellation. Yes, both of those are sadly a thing. Lightning damage from mana cost. If you're an Archmage, don't touch this one. Anyone else may be fine with the first 1 or 2 levels, but the third one looks a bit lethal, doing 1000% of your mana cost as damage to yourself. Random projectiles. If you don't use projectiles, this will be absolutely fine. If you do, this is a real pain in the ass. Treacherous auras. If you use a lot of auras, then these will probably kill you, otherwise you'll be absolutely fine. Siphon charges basically makes you lose charges over time, gives them to monsters. If you have a lot of charges, could be a problem. Otherwise, pretty safe. Occasional impotence, probably only okay if you're going to use mines or traps, which deal the damage for you as a proxy. Totems are probably fine too. Please note I haven't tried any of these, but they should be fine. And last but not least in this section, bonus chaos damage. If you go CI, this will probably do nothing to you, otherwise it might tickle a little bit. Okay, we're on the final stretch. We're about to talk barge pole modifiers. But first, if you found this video useful or even remotely entertaining, then please smash that like button. The first of our barge pole modifiers are there because they limit the arena. And the first one is limited arena, making the encounter area much smaller. The second is Stormcaller runes. I really don't like these. They seem to work like stone circles, sort of working out how long you've remained in an area to then hit you the moment you enter it again. And the next four make this list because they're just plain evil. The first one is escalating damage. Monsters basically slowly increase their damage by 1% per second up to a maximum of 50%. So after just under a minute, they'll be doing 50% more damage, which is quite nasty. The second is very similar. Escalated monster speed. Basically monsters get 2.5% increased attack, cast and movement speed per second, up to a maximum of 50%. So this hits much quicker. And these are both bad because the monsters in these encounters already hit like a truck. And the next two are on this list because flasks are extremely important. And these are of course hindering flasks, which hinder you for 4 seconds after using a flask, and then the most evil of them all, limited flasks. Basically you only get the flask effect of one flask at a time, which is extremely bad. If I did miss any modifiers, then I do apologise. Please let me know in the comments below. And with that, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.